Okay. So in theory, at this point, you should be able to see my screen. Igor and I have done a fair bit of work. He recently got the ability to set the SIG OpenStack label, and actually that's a good point in and of itself. The area platform OpenStack label is no more, so it's been replaced by the SIG/OpenStack label, the same as occurred for most of the other area/platform labels in GitHub as well. So as a result of the fact that we now actually have the ability to set the label ourselves, and also using that to do some triage, we have a better ability to use GitHub queries to just get out things that have changed since the last meeting, because all of those issues are actually getting the right tag, so we can easily find them. So in terms of the three things that have merged since the last meeting, the main highlight here, I think, was the implementation of the roots provider API. So I know Angus had been fighting rebase hell on that for a very long time, and that finally has merged. So that was good to see. There's some cleanup in terms of the instance list method, which was deprecated quite a long time ago, and also some cleanup regarding the load balancer methods that merged in the last 14 days or so as well, I believe. In terms of open PRs, so we have 8 open PRs at the moment. That's outstanding. And one of the key things with a lot of these, and we see this particularly towards the end of this list, so the first 3 here are in an okay state, with the exception of this one is the CLA signed, but at least is relatively up to date. But when we look at some of the older PRs, Rackspace Gopher Cloud to Gopher Cloud library migration that Angus was working on needs a rebase, and unfortunately that is a pretty invasive rebase that's required from memory as well. And then similarly, all of the other issues below that line need a rebase as well. And some of these, I was looking at earlier, the original author isn't necessarily still active on some of these either, which is problematic. So I know Kevin is still around and probably will rebase these two at some point, but it's not as clear for the Cinder fix, and I think it's the one we were discussing on Slack earlier today actually as well. It's not as clear that that author is going to rebase that anytime soon, which is problematic. Does anyone have any other comments or questions on any of those? Or anything specific they'd like to call out for that matter? Okay. I'm going to skip over open issues for now. Simply because A, we don't really have quorum to go through all 27 or anything like that, but also because I wanted to talk a little bit about triage going forward as well. So the other updates, you and I attended the community meeting last week, I think, and one of the things that has been floated across the SIGs, across the community actually in general, is this idea of having Kubernetes 1.6 be more of a stabilization-focused release, and what does that mean for the SIGs? Given the fact that Angus is no longer full-time on the provider and that no one else has really stepped up to be full-time on the provider, it seems likely that it's in effect a stabilization cycle simply because of the fact that we don't have bandwidth to do any significant feature work. So those existing open items are probably it in terms of things that we would have potential to work on. And separately, there's also still the ongoing discussion about splitting the provider, or not just this provider, but all of the providers into separate repositories. And that obviously would impact whether we take on major feature work as well. What I guess was interested in the context of the stabilization cycle is a topic that came up on the mailing list last week, which was the federated testing, and the fact that, as far as I'm aware, there are no OpenStack environments reporting into federated testing. So that is something that I am trying to fix on the Red Hat side. From the RDO CI, ideally. But the question, I think, is whether there are any other folks who would be willing or able to run run the E2E test and report into the federated testing, basically. And I'll just quickly grab the link to that information. So people can refer to it later. So in the context of the stabilization cycle idea, the other thing was improving test coverage, and that's not something we've done any deep analysis on at this point. I just wanted to pause for a second. So for the folks who are on the line, I mean, talking about 1.6 and even beyond that 1.7, what are folks seeing as kind of the critical gaps for them at the moment in terms of Kubernetes on OpenStack? I mean, is it just stuff like what Paul was talking about earlier with the Cinder volumes and an actual bug, or is there real feature work required that you're not seeing at the moment?
I'm not sure about like this situation, but I suppose we may ask Dims, who has been actively working on the bug trash and issue trash process for 1.5, so he should be aware of most of this stuff. Unfortunately, he's not here, but he's like an active participant for our meetings, probably.
Yeah, he's been pretty active in the issue triage that I've been doing as well. So what I was saying just before you joined, Igor, was that just mentioning the fact that we're now setting the label ourselves, or at least you have the ability to set the label, and we've been using that to be more proactive about ensuring that the queries I linked above show an accurate picture of the OpenStack related work, basically.
Yeah, so actually I can also work on that, on labeling all the stuff and so on, because Teams has been working on that for 1.5 release, and as far as I know, he stepped back.
Right. Yeah.
I'm working like in a bit different field, but I also have permissions to label that stuff. So if anybody is interested in my help here, please ping me directly. Steve usually does, and I will help you with labeling and clarifying the issue of our stuff.
The other thing, if there's no more comments on the 1.6 piece, I guess the other thing I wanted to highlight is that there has been some discussion on the community list and ultimately resulting in some changes to the bottom of the README file in the community repo, just around what it means to be a SIG, expectations regarding usage of the mailing list, Slack, recording of meetings, and so on. So I'm going to try and be a little more proactive around making sure we meet all of those things. The other thing I was going to say is that I'd be interested in anyone else who wants to take a hand in facilitating the SIG. If they're interested in the new year, that's something we can certainly explore as well. So with that in mind, the one other thing I proposed on the mailing list cancelling the December 28th meeting. which I think is what we're set for in the current schedule. I didn't get any for or against on that, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. And the other thing was, perhaps reflected in the attendance today, is this meeting slot has been troublesome, as in particular the number of European contributors in this area of the Kubernetes code base has grown for a number of contributor companies. So we are looking at trying to move the meeting time in the new year to better fit basically interested parties if we can identify them. So I have sent out a when is good to the mailing list. I will probably email that out again next week just to make sure it gets as many eyes as possible. We've already had a few responses, and then we'll set a meeting time for next year. I don't think for the 2017 goals we really have a quorum today, so that's something I'll have to take to the mailing list as well. So that is an exercise that the AWS SIG, for example, are doing to basically just set a short kind of 3 to 5 bullet points almost with a little bit of descriptive text around what they want to achieve in 2017, which seems like an appropriate way to frame some high-level goals, particularly around the things that, as I mentioned, we haven't really been focusing on. So the contributions to the provider have been very tactical for the most part, and as a result, things like testing, particularly the federated testing, have been going by the wayside. That's something we probably need to improve on. So I'll send something to the mailing list on that. All right, so with that in mind, is there anything else people wanted to raise today?
Yeah, actually for 2017, I am collecting the whole roadmap for all Kubernetes as a product. We're working closely with a partner from Google.
Right.
And yeah, so I would like to receive the whole feedback from SIG participants regarding what we are liking in the field for 2017, because yeah, it's one of the most important fields for 2017 with regards to the meeting for the planning session for 2017 that we had during Dev Summit in Seattle. So there are like one of the most important topics that has been highlighted, that we have to enlarge our presence and provide Kubernetes as a first-class citizen for other cloud providers, not only GCE. So AWS, OpenStack, maybe VMware, Pure Bare Metal, Iron Frogs. And probably AWS and OpenStack are the most important cloud providers, except of Google Cloud itself.
Yeah, is there, so similar to the community or the stabilization discussion, is there going to be a survey around this, or is this something we need to collect within the SIG just in a more ad hoc format?
Well, I suppose we have to send a message to the mailing list. Probably some of the SIG participants would like to share some feedback. At the same time, I don't feel that we have any like big gaps in the stabilization field. So we don't have any really major features, and we don't have these features to stabilize. So actually, most of OpenStack stuff is stable enough.
I think the main issue I'm seeing, just in terms of volume of stuff that's in those 27 open issues, and also the comments on the Slack, is around the Cinder volume support. It still seems like there's a combination of lack of documentation, confusion, and also just things that are wrong in the implementation that people are hitting. So that's one area I personally would suggest. But that's, again, probably something to discuss on the mailing list.
I agree. Yeah.
Okay. Did anyone want to bring up anything else? probably call that a day then. And I'll see you all on Slack and in a GitHub issue somewhere. And yeah, please do take the time though when we start that thread about 2017 goals in particular. Take some time to respond to that, just in terms of your needs from the provider and from Kubernetes and OpenStack